My wife doesn't know her best friend confessed his love to me. Should I tell her? It all started on a night I'll never forget. Emily and Josh had been best friends since high school. They shared everything. Inside jokes, childhood memories, and an unspoken understanding that sometimes made me feel like an outsider. When Emily and I started dating, Josh was always around. At first, it annoyed me, but I chalked it up to their long history. I thought I could live with it until that one night. The confession. Emily was away on a business trip, leaving me home alone for a few days. One evening, there was a knock on the door. It was Josh, holding a six-pack of beer and wearing a strained smile. "Mind if I come in?" he asked, his voice unusually tense. We'd hung out plenty of times before, so I didn't think much of it. We sat on the back porch, drinking and talking about random stuff, sports, work, life. But then the conversation took a sudden turn. Josh stared at the ground, silent for a long moment, before finally speaking. "I can't keep pretending anymore." My stomach twisted. Something about his voice, low and strained, set off every alarm in my head. "I've been in love with Emily. For years." The world seemed to tilt. Couldn't breathe. He kept talking, words spilling out like he'd been holding them in for too long. "I tried to move on, but every time I see her with you, it kills me. You have everything I ever wanted." I was frozen. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was shock, and maybe a hint of pity. He looked so broken. You can't say things like that," I managed to choke out. "I know," he whispered, running a trembling hand through his hair. I needed you to know." The fallout. After that night, Josh disappeared. He stopped texting, stopped coming around. Emily noticed right away. "Have you heard from Josh?" she asked one evening while we were cooking dinner. "He's been so distant. It's weird." I felt that familiar weight settle in my chest. "Maybe he's just busy." She frowned but didn't push it. Weeks turned into months. Every time she brought up Josh, I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of my secret. Should I tell her the truth? Would it ruin her memories of him, of their entire friendship? The breaking point. One night, I woke up to find Emily sitting alone in the dark living room, scrolling through old photos on her phone. A picture of her and Josh flashed on the screen, both of them laughing carefree. "I miss him," she whispered, tears shining in her eyes. "I don't understand why he just left." I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand seeing her hurt over someone who had made it impossible for us to keep him in our lives. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you." She looked up, eyes wide, sensing the seriousness in my voice. I told her everything. Every word, every detail. Her face crumbled as she listened, her breath hitching. "No, he couldn't, she whispered, as if saying it out loud would make it untrue. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't want you to get hurt." The aftermath. For days, Emily was quiet, lost in her thoughts. I gave her space, terrified that telling the truth had shattered something between us. But then, one evening, she came to me, her expression softer, more resigned. "Thank you for being honest," she said. I need time, but I'm glad I know." We held each other in silence, both mourning what was lost. Her friendship, my trust in someone I thought was a friend, and the version of our past that felt simpler before the truth came out. Months later, life slowly found its rhythm again. Emily and I rebuilt what felt broken, stronger now because there were no more secrets. We moved forward, though Josh's absence lingered like a distant memory neither of us could quite let go. One day, out of the blue, Emily received a single-line text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything." She stared at the message for a long time, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, before quietly deleting it. "Let's go outside," she said softly, taking my hand. "It's a beautiful day." And just like that, we moved forward together. Sometimes closure doesn't come from answers, but from letting go. A year later, life gradually returned to normal. though Josh's absence left a faint scar on our shared history. Emily stopped mentioning him, though I could tell she thought about him from time to time, the way you think about someone who was once important but belongs firmly in the past. Our relationship grew stronger. We learned how to be more honest with each other, even when the truth hurt. It felt like we had weathered something that could have broken us, but instead, it made us more connected, more real. But life has a funny way of circling back when you least expect it. The email. It was a quiet Sunday morning. I was sipping my coffee and skimming through emails when a familiar name popped up in my inbox. Josh R. Anderson. My heart pounded as I clicked the message. Subject: I owe you both the truth. Hey, I don't know if this will even reach you, but I need to say something I should have said a long time ago. I'm sorry. For everything. For what I said that night. For disappearing. And for leaving you both in the dark. I left because I couldn't handle my feelings. I thought disappearing would make things easier for everyone, but I see now that running only caused more pain. I'm in a better place now, and I hope you are too. Thank you for being better people than I ever was. Josh. I sat there, frozen, rereading the email. There was no bitterness in his words, no lingering resentment. Only honesty and what felt like genuine peace. Telling Emily. I debated whether to tell Emily about the email. Part of me wanted to protect her from reopening old wounds, but after everything we'd been through, keeping it from her felt wrong. That evening, after dinner, I handed her my phone. You should see this. She read the email slowly, her expression unreadable. When she finished, she placed the phone down and stared out the window, lost in thought. I don't hate him, she said quietly. I thought I would. But I don't. Neither of us spoke for a while, letting the past settle back into place. A chance encounter. Months passed, and life continued, until one crisp autumn afternoon when fate intervened again. Emily and I were at a local fall festival with our daughter, Lily, now 4 years old. She ran ahead, chasing after some colorful balloons, her laughter ringing through the air. And that's when I saw him. Josh. He was standing near a craft booth, holding hands with a smiling brunette woman. He looked different, older, calmer, happy. Before I could decide what to do, Lily ran straight past him, nearly colliding with his legs. He bent down instinctively to steady her, laughing softly. Their eyes met, and for a moment he froze, until he looked up and saw us. Our gazes locked, and time seemed to stand still. Emily gripped my hand tightly but didn't look away. Josh gave a small, respectful nod, almost relieved. There was no awkwardness, no sadness, just a quiet understanding. Without a word, he took the woman's hand again, and they disappeared into the crowd. The final chapter. That night, after Lily was tucked into bed, Emily and I sat on the porch, wrapped in a shared blanket, watching the stars. I'm glad we saw him, she whispered. I didn't think I needed that, but I did. Me too, I admitted, finally feeling something lift inside me. We never saw Josh again after that day, but we didn't need to. His story, our story, it was finally complete. No regrets, no unfinished business. Sometimes closure doesn't come with grand gestures or deep conversations. Sometimes, it's just seeing someone you once thought would haunt you, and realizing they don't anymore. Life moves on. And sometimes, if you're lucky, so do you 5 years later. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest memories. Life moved forward in ways I never could have imagined. Emily and I celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary with a quiet trip to the mountains. Just the two of us. Our daughter, Lily, now 9, is the light of our lives. Curious, creative, and always asking questions that make me realize how fast she's growing up. We rarely talked about Josh anymore. Not because we were avoiding the past, but because it felt settled. He had become a chapter in our lives that ended exactly how it needed to. But as life often does, it wasn't quite done with us yet. The unexpected letter. One rainy autumn evening, after Emily and Lily had gone to bed, I sat down with a glass of whiskey and started sorting through the mail. Among the usual bills and flyers was a thick, cream-colored envelope with no return address. Curiosity piqued. I opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter. Dear Emily, and my name. I hope this reaches you. I wasn't sure if I should write, but there are things I need to say before it's too late. First, thank you for everything. You both were more important to me than I ever admitted, even when I let my feelings ruin what we had. Looking back now, I see how much I hurt you, even though it was never my intention. I wanted you to know, I'm at peace now. I found happiness. I married Sarah, and we have 2 incredible boys who make me believe in second chances. Life turned out better than I deserved. But there's one last thing I need you to know. I'm sick. It's serious, and I don't have much time left. I didn't want you to find out after it was too late. You meant more to me than I ever had the courage to say, and I wanted you to hear it from me. Thank you for being part of my story, for being my family when I didn't know how to be yours. With all my heart, Josh. I sat there for a long time, rereading the letter, my chest tight. His words hit harder than I expected. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He'd already forgiven himself. He was saying goodbye. Telling Emily. The next morning, I handed Emily the letter, watching her expression shift as she read it. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just sat there, holding the letter like something precious. I thought I'd let it all go, she whispered, her voice trembling. But this feels different. Do you want to see him? I asked cautiously. She hesitated for a long moment, then nodded. I think I need to. The final goodbye. A week later, we found ourselves on the front steps of a quiet, sunlit home in a peaceful suburban neighborhood. Sarah opened the door with a soft, knowing smile, her eyes red-rimmed but kind. He's been waiting for you, she whispered, guiding us inside. Josh was sitting in a chair by the large living room window, a blanket draped over his legs. He looked thinner, frilier, but his eyes still sparkled with the familiar warmth we both remembered. When he saw us, his face lit up with something that looked like relief and maybe, just maybe, closure. Hey, he said, his voice weak but steady. You came. We sat with him for hours, talking about everything and nothing. Old memories, funny stories, shared regrets. He met Lily for the first time, and she charmed him the way only she could, filling the room with laughter. Before we left, Josh gently took Emily's hand in his eyes shining. I'm glad I got to see you again. One last time. So am I, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The end of the story. Josh passed away peacefully 2 weeks later. His wife Sarah sent us a simple message. He wanted you to know. He left this world with no regrets. We attended the memorial service, standing quietly at the back. His sons shared stories about the loving, funny, and deeply caring man their father had been. Someone who had finally found peace. As we left the cemetery, Emily squeezed my hand tightly. There was sadness, yes, but also something else. Something lighter. We were lucky, she whispered, to have known him and to have said goodbye. I nodded, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed to. Moving forward, life continued as it always does. Years passed, and the memories of Josh remained. No longer painful, but warm, like the glow of a setting sun. He became part of our family's story, woven into the fabric of who we were. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I'd catch Emily looking at the stars, a soft, knowing smile on her lips. She never said anything, but I knew, because some stories don't end with goodbyes. They end with peace. 10 years later, time kept moving forward as it always does. Lily graduated from high school and went off to college, chasing her dreams with the same fearless determination she'd had since she was a little girl. Emily and I grew older, our lives settling into a comfortable rhythm filled with quiet mornings, long walks by the lake, and occasional visits from our daughter. We never forgot Josh. His memory lived on, not as something painful or unresolved, but as part of the journey that shaped who we were. His letter stayed tucked away in a small wooden keepsake box Emily kept by her bedside, along with other precious memories from our lives. A surprise visit. One summer afternoon, we were sitting on our porch, sipping iced tea and watching the sunset, when a familiar car pulled into our driveway. For a moment, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Sarah, Josh's wife. She stepped out with two young men in their early 20s, tall and broad-shouldered, just like their father. I recognized them instantly from the last time we saw them at the memorial service. Emily gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth as she rose from her seat. Sarah? Sarah smiled warmly, her eyes misting with emotion. I hope we're not intruding. I just felt like it was time. Full circle. We spent the entire afternoon talking, laughing, and sharing stories about Josh. His sons, Luke and Aaron, were kind, funny, and full of life just like he had been. They shared stories about their father's love for adventure, his corny jokes, and the way he always encouraged them to love deeply and live without regrets. Before they left, Sarah handed Emily a small, wrapped package. "He wanted you to have this," she said softly. "He told me one day when it felt right." Emily carefully unwrapped the paper, revealing a beautifully bound leather journal. Inside were pages filled with Josh's handwriting, stories, letters, and memories he had written in his final months. At the front, there was a simple inscription, "For Emily and my name. Thank you for being my beginning and my peace." Emily's hands trembled as she traced the words, tears streaming down her face. The last chapter. That evening, after Sarah and the boys left, Emily and I sat by the fire, the journal resting between us. We read page after page, discovering stories we'd never known, memories Josh had cherished, and reflections on life, love, and forgiveness. In his final entry, he had written, "Life doesn't give you the ending you expect. It gives you the one you need. I found mine in love, in forgiveness, and in letting go. Thank you for teaching me what it means to truly live." We sat in silence for a long time, holding each other as the fire crackled softly. It felt like the last piece of the puzzle had finally fallen into place. The end of the story. We placed Josh's journal in our keepsake box alongside his letter, knowing it would always be a part of our family's story. Not a source of sadness, but a reminder of how far we'd come, how much we'd grown, and how deeply we had loved. Sometimes, on quiet summer evenings, we still sit on that old porch, watching the sunset. And in those golden, fleeting moments, I can almost hear his voice, light, warm, and full of life. Because some stories don't end. They become part of you, forever.